All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Fearcast. This is the podcast dedicated to OCD, anxiety, and anxiety spectrum disorders, and getting your life back. I'm your host, Kevin Foss, and I'm a licensed clinician specializing in anxiety and OCD. Thank you so much for joining me. So typically, this is a question and answer-based podcast. You can go over to fearcastpodcast.com and click on the submit a question link. Send me a question, and I will put it up on a future episode. You can also find me over at Instagram. I am Fearcast Podcast over there, and you can send me an audio question over there. Of course, you can do that over at the website as well. Just send me a record it onto your computer and upload it to Google Drive and send me a shared link or email it to questions at Fearcast Podcast, the audio to that. But you can go over to Instagram and you can send me a DM and click on the little microphone in the text box, record your question there, and those will get priority and will be uploaded as soon as I can next. So today is going to be a little bit different. Today is a bit of a continuation from the Anxiety in the Arts series I did a while ago, and I was lucky enough to have a podcast listener join me to talk about their experience with anxiety and anxiety treatment and how it affected their life. And what's even cooler to me is that I had the opportunity to actually see this guy. He's a musician. Got to see him play, and we talk a little bit about that in the episode. But it was such a treat for my wife and I to be able to go out to a concert of his, see him play. Got to meet his family. Super cool guy and a fantastic bass player. We try not to we don't get nerdy about bass stuff too much in this. I promise. I'm a bass player, so I could have bent his ear and been annoying about gear and stuff more than I did. But I tried to keep it mellow. Tried to keep it reasonable. We do talk a little bit about some music stuff. He pointed out a note in the intro music. So I played all the intro music, and he pointed out what is a wrong note. It's a wrong note. It's a wrong note from my perspective. I think he was trying to be polite and not say it's a wrong note, saying that it can fit, but within if you think about it in a different way, or if you kind of use this one mode to make it fit, it's a wrong note. I played a wrong note in there. So, but we're talking about a flat note in there. I suppose this is relevant. I don't know. It's unrelevant. We're talking about a flat note. What I thought he was talking about was a flat 2 in a scale, which would make absolutely no sense in my mind. It ultimately is a flat 7, which makes more sense, but it should have been a major 7th note. But either way, it doesn't matter, because likely speaking, no one else but him caught it, and that's great. Even though I've been trying my best to not go back and re-record, which I will probably go back and re-record anyways, but that's a whole separate conversation. So why don't I just get on into that conversation? And I should also say, if there are others out there who are musicians or artists or actors or sculptors or painters or dancers or whatever, if you've experienced anxiety spectrum disorder, which can include social anxiety, it can include OCD, it can include generalized anxiety, it can include anything, it includes specific phobia as well, emetophobia even, that falls into the phobia category. Anyways, whole point is, if you experience anxiety and you are a performing artist or an artist in general, I would love to hear from you. I want to have as many voices on this podcast to share their experience of what it is like to be an artist, what it's like to be an artist experiencing anxiety, how anxiety influences their art for the better or for the worse, and where they are in their struggle, and what they're doing to keep working through it. So if that's you, reach out to me over at Instagram, over at the website, either way, and I would love to chat. But this episode is about Brian Killeen. And so I'll tell you just briefly about Brian, and then we'll jump into the episode. So Brian Killeen is he's a New York native, and he is a professional electric bass player and upright bass player in New York and across the country. So without further ado, here's my interview with Brian Killeen. All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian Killeen, for joining us today for the Fearcast.
It is a pleasure to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller.
I was expecting someone was at some point going to say something like that, and but I'm glad it was you to be the person to say it. So,
well, now that I'm a dad times two, I fully have my dad joke license, and I use it frequently.
Good.
Yeah.
On a bit of a side note, are you a Reddit person?
No.
Good. First off,
when we went, in the course of obsessive Googling, of course, we'll probably get to this.
Oh, we'll get there.
I definitely found myself on Reddit.
Fair enough. The only reason I bring it up, they have a whole subreddit dedicated to dad jokes.
Ooh.
So it's worth looking up. But anyways, we aren't here to necessarily talk about Reddit. The goal is you are joining us today as a professional working musician who has experienced OCD and anxiety in the course of your life. It has impacted various parts of your life, and wanted to have this time for you to share a little bit about your story and what worked, what didn't work. Where you were and where you are now.
Okay, sounds good. Let's go for it. Well, I have my coffee, my decaf coffee.
Decaf. All right, I'll respect
don't want to be too riled up.
That's
right
true.
Now,
Can't get too can't get too crazy. It's only a podcast. You never know.
Sure. A little aside. When I first started therapy in 2018. By Grand Central Station in New York City, where I live. I don't live in Grand Central Station, but
many
the
people
office
do.
was by Grand Central Station. I would stop by. I would always get a cup of coffee at Grumpy, which is a coffee institution here in the city. And the first couple of times I showed up, and I was just already like hyped up, and then I would just dig into this Americano. And just like, I'm not sure the guy got a word in edgewise, but I was just like ranting for an hour and fueled by coffee. So that's what we can look forward to. That's what we can look forward to today. So let's go for it.
You know what? I'm looking forward to that. Ranting with a brain full of coffee is again how the podcast has been sustained for all these years. So it's how it's going to go. Well, Brian, I guess why don't we start at the beginning? I guess maybe not all the way at the beginning at birth, but I guess tell us a little bit about the arc of your story. When you first started noticing anxiety showing up.
I'd say it. Well, at first, it kind of goes hand in hand time wise with when I started. I've always been into music and started on saxophone and stuff, but I started playing bass. When I was about 10 years old. And that's when I just like dug in head first. I said, this is going to be it. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm going to stop playing sports. I'm not going to have friends. I'm just going to, this is going to be my life. I'm going to sit in my room and learn tunes, and that's it till I'm a professional musician. So like along that time, I spent a lot of time indoors and I remember I had a falling out with a group of friends, and I didn't really make an effort to fall in with another group. And that's when I dug headfirst into music and everything. And I just kind of like became this morose teenager, that's not an uncommon thing at all. But I really, I could have used some sunshine now and again. And, yeah, definitely was, you could label it as shy, but I had trouble getting words out of my mouth, whereas I had no trouble playing music. Still to this day, like, if you put a microphone, ask me to talk in front of a room full of people, I will be absolutely terrified. But if you give me a bass guitar, I could do that all day. So, so that crept in, and, my attention span went, and social anxiety, friends, couldn't talk to girls, just like, I just put a lot of pressure on myself too, and just fell into this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But that's not to say, it was a bad childhood or anything like that. But I definitely tend to fall into spirals of anxiety when the spotlight, when it's a high pressure situation or the spotlight is on me, like when I was asked to read in school, read a passage. Mm-hmm. I remember words coming out of my mouth, but if you asked me what I read, I couldn't tell you. I did not process any of that information. So
just kind of power through. What was if you could think back to that time, what was the worry? What was the thought fueling that anxiety?
Just judging myself, fear of how people judged me. Mm-hmm. I remember, definitely, like, there was in like not talking to girls and everything, and there was definitely like a fear of being gay, and that set the seeds for like some SOOCD down the turnpike, and just I fell into this like. Yeah, I mean, I would open up with certain people, but it had to be within a close circle. Mm-hmm. And then later on in high school, I fell in with a group of people, and I realized, there are a lot of people who feel the same way I do. These are all normal fears, and these people listen to music I listen to, and these people have the same anxieties I have, and I'm not this freak that I thought I was. I'm actually pretty. I don't want to use the word normal because there is no normal, but I can function in this society. I could, and play music,
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny that when we keep our anxieties inside and we just think that we're the only person who is thinking and feeling the thing that we're feeling, and then all of a sudden, when we trust someone enough to talk about it, people go, yeah, me too. Like, I do that too, or I think that too, or I get worried about that as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was I going to say? I don't know. Let's continue. Let's move on.
Yeah. So you're kind of on this journey. You're dedicated. All right. I'm going to be a musician. I'm going down this path. I think it's so. At some point, we talked before. You eventually gone to music school, went and focused on that as your focus of study. How did anxiety show up within that process, or within that kind of stage of life?
Well, yeah, the scene. I mean, this is a similar type of thing. It was a small program, and towards the end of high school, I started going to parties. I had a couple of Heinekens at a party, and it's like, yeah, like, this is awesome. Let's bring it on, and then I show up to jazz school, and we're totally the outcasts of the school. We're within the state school, this like underground subterranean jazz program where we all just talk about train and don't get any sun and sit in practice rooms all day. So I had a strong urge to want to do normal person things, and but at the same time I wanted to pursue my craft. So there was just a lot of social anxiety. I didn't get to ride that tide and follow that momentum I had late in high school, fomenting friendships, talking to girls, going on dates. Because all of a sudden you show up to the jazz program and there's like one girl and 87 guys.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so there was just a lot of underlying social anxiety. Just and I felt like everyone knew more than me. A little bit of imposter syndrome. creeping in there. You know, I'm sure you could put a label to everything, but I mean, but also it helped me overcome a lot of fears. I joined this touring band, called Ulu, which is a funk band, and I had never traveled and auditioned, and this was my senior year in college. And they're like, all right, you ready? Here's the schedule. And it was just all over the map, all over the country. I was like, wow. Bring it on. Yeah, like let's do it. Mm-hmm. and that, you know, I largely abandoned my senior year of college, but the experiences of that, incredible. Just mm-hmm. driving around in a van, as only like a 20-year-old could do, you know, crashing on people's floors,
sure.
and not knowing where you're going to stay, and just making friends everywhere, and winding up at some house with people listening to Fish and passing a bong. You know,
sounds about right.
I would maybe take one hit and pass it on. I never got too into weed, thankfully. Never really floated my boat, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so interesting as you're kind of describing the you know, social anxiety you experience. You know, kind of this kind of this imposter syndrome, this nervousness to talk to girls, this, you know, anxiety about what other people were going to think about you. But, you know, something like getting up on stage to perform in front of, you know, X amount of people, that's where you felt at home. You felt comfortable there, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, still to this day, like if there's an intermission or something, I'm going to be like, shit, what am I going to do with that 15, 20 minutes? You know, like, but if I'm in the thick of it, that's my safe space.
Right. Yeah.
And when things got really deep and dark for me, panning ahead to like 2017, 2018, where I was just really in my head before I sought out a therapist, music shows weren't my safe space anymore. I was like, because my mind would be going, I'd be like, but what if those thoughts crept in while I'm playing right now? And of course, you know, it's the pink elephant in the room.
Yeah.
It would come marching on by, and I'd be like, oh man. And then the next show would come along. Oh, this feels great. But what if
that one comes in?
Yeah, because it happened last time. So what if it comes in now? And then I was pretty much doomed for a while. And then COVID came. So forget about that, you know.
Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, remember that? Yeah. It's so frustrating that's how, you know, anxiety and OCD tend to work, is that they are insidious, where they attack the thing that you care about the most. That safe place you had, you know, you can jump on stage, play anything, play in front of a group of people, where, you know, for a lot of people, that's their most terrifying thing, to get up on stage and to really be in the spotlight. Whereas for you were home, right? So naturally, sure, anxiety is going to try to creep in there. What if this thought ruins this thing that you care about the most?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
100%. Yep. Worst case scenario, just like whatever situation I was in, that like what would, oh, I'm having a great time. What could possibly derail this? Well, I'll give you 1,000 reasons what could possibly, 1,000 things that could possibly derail this moment. And, you know, all you need is one to stick.
Right.
You know, it's like flypaper, and the thoughts come streaming on by. And if I'm in the right or the wrong mind frame, one of them will stick and could be a knockout punch. You know,
right,
take me right out. Yeah.
So when you were up and performing, what were some of those thoughts that were coming in that were of dread? Because it kind of sounds like, you know, you certainly had the anxiety about, you know, just social stuff. You kind of talked about some sexual orientation kind of fears. But as you were trying to, you know, perform, what were those thoughts that you were saying, oh, I hope this thought doesn't come in. I hope this thought doesn't derail me while I play. Was it just kind of anything, or was it more specific to, you know, that SOCD theme?
You know, it would mostly be self-judgment. make one mistake, whole gig is ruined kind of situation.
Right.
So that was, aside from OCD, just like, really harsh self-judgment. And, I remember like being in like all county jazz band and coming off stage and being like, everyone be like, great job. Be like, I suck. That sucks. Take me back to the practice room. Let me go play an F blues for 3 hours.
Right. Just to make sure that I have the muscle memory for it. So I don't forget it. Though you played that 1,000 times over.
Yeah. And it could be anything. It could be, like, how I greeted someone. Did I give the wrong handshake? Did I make eye contact with the wrong person? Did I anything was fair game. Just like was there a certain person in the audience who was gonna pick apart every note I'm playing? Mm-hmm. And this isn't specific to any one time era. This is just the grab bag of anxiety.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, and it's kind of that thing that that one thing that you were the most confident in, the one thing that you knew the most, right, was playing, right, performing. I imagine you go to get jazz school, you're getting gigs. Music backwards and forwards. You know the role of a bass player, how it works. You know what you need to do. And then that thought comes in, what if you don't? What if you mess something up? Or what if you do something? Is it kind of like the handshake thing? Is it if you do something absent-mindedly or if you do something incorrect, that's just going to derail everything?
Yeah. I was never confident I never lost my confidence that I was going to do a good job.
Okay.
But I did lose my confidence in my ability to keep a clear head and enjoy what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Like I knew somewhere in the back of my mind that I enjoyed playing music,
yeah.
But why haven't I had a good time on a gig in, however many months or something? And I knew somewhere along the way that I would find that place again, because otherwise why am I continuing to play music? I should go be an accountant or something. But nothing against accountants. I mean, heck, I could use a good one right now if I'm not in trouble or anything, but just between accountants, everybody. But yeah, where were we? Music, anxiety.
Yeah, you were kind of talking about that. What's that?
No, please.
It sounds
Steer
like
the ship.
It sounds like you were kind of at this place where that anxious voice was starting to creep into your playing, and yeah, so maybe it wasn't that feared story was going to derail everything. It was just going to kind of suck the joy out of it, right? So if I have this thought, if this one sticks, I'm not going to be focused, and therefore I'm not going to enjoy, right?
Sure.
Did that ever actually impact your performance, or ever impact your actual playing, or was it more of the perception for yourself?
Yes, I mean you're always going to play music better, in quotes I'm saying, because when you're emotionally tuned in to what you're playing and those around you. So if I was completely disconnected, I could I would call it going on autopilot. Mm-hmm. I knew the right notes to play. I knew there was music and energy around me, and I could play stuff that will fit well with it. Mm-hmm. But like if I was tuned in, I would be listening better. I would be more conversational with the instruments and the musicians around me. If you think in terms of a jazz setting, improvisation, everyone's kind of feeding off of each other.
You need to really listen and be present.
If one person is a stick in the mud, then it's going to drag down the whole group.
Right.
But in a pop music setting, I feel like you could get away with autopilot a little better, but to take it to the next level, and people feel that. People, like what was going on? That was a great show. Like you could tell all you guys were in tune and blah blah blah. Like it comes across, but I mean, anxiety could certainly come across in an artful way too. I mean, have you listened to free jazz?
Free jazz. Free jazz just makes me anxious.
That just brings me back to practice rooms, where we like turn the lights off and be like, all right, let's just vibe for 2 hours. And just like,
That's amazing. And for anybody out there who doesn't know what free jazz sounds like, just go Google free jazz and just listen to the first thing that YouTube comes up with, and you'll get an idea. But
I'm glad I'm a little disconnected from the jazz community these days.
Are they going to come get you with pitchforks for having said that?
Yeah. It's like Job being banned from the Federation of Magicians and arrested to Television.
Well, hopefully they don't get you because of this.
No, it's totally fine.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. So all this was going on, you're kind of fighting it. How did you get through all of it? Before you finally broke down and said, I need to see someone about this. What were you doing in that time to kind of hold it all together?
I mean, barely. Like I was so inside my head. There were certain days where the only option was to go to sleep, because like my body was shutting down because I was just so full of worry, anxiety, analyzing every tiny bit of my life, and then dreams too. Mm-hmm. Analyzing dreams. If I woke up and didn't know exactly what happened in my dream, I would freak out and invent a narrative. Mm-hmm. Same with looking back at past events. Like it got to the point where I seriously didn't even like. I felt like I had no identity. I just ripped my life to shreds, just like analyzing. It comes to and when I go back and look at stuff and find a positive moment and feel that feeling, I'd be like, oh man, I know it's in there somewhere, but just how am I going to get back to that? But so I did go see a therapist, and he's like, yeah, you have OCD, and gave me some CBT worksheets, and we did some hierarchies and texts but I did feel like for me it was a game of whack-a-mole, because I felt like everything was a trigger at that point. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really didn't start seeing real. For me, it's been kind of a slow burn. I saw that therapist for about 1.5 years. He was great, but I felt like it had run its course. And at that point, we had our first child was born, and just putting the attention towards that. So that was cool. But then, the more anxious I am, and with the first child, that certainly brought a great deal of anxiety. Yeah. The more likely I am to fall into that zone. So I reached out. I worked with a couple of people through No CD. Mm-hmm. Mixed results. Mixed. One guy I didn't groove with, and the other woman was great, and then she left. She moved on to other pastures. So I've been kind of like flying without a net for a while, but like the good days are far outnumbering bad days, and like still very much a work in progress. But I do know that like serious progress is being made. Mm-hmm. And I'm just I could talk to my children with a clear mind. I can go to gigs. I can socialize. Yeah. The heart rate's getting back to normal, and rather than having to retreat to a safe space like go out and walk the dog, or for me, listening to music was a way to break out of it sometimes. But
tell me about that. How did that work for you? I can imagine for some folks, they might blame music, or they might get like upset because it kind of pulls them back into that space. But for you, it sounds like it was helpful. What did you find helpful about listening to music?
There's certain music that just brought me. Still, of course, still brings me just to a place of pure joy. Just like. And it's weird because I was this total dark jazz nerd, middle school and jazz school,
mm-hmm.
and then I remember a friend showed me this DVD of U2
mm-hmm.
from the Elevation tour, and I was like, "Wow, this is awesome!" Like this multimedia experience and this like level of rock and roll and fan connection. Just people reaching out. I'm like, this is what I want to do. I don't want to gaze at my shoes. I've looked at my shoes long enough. Like I want to play music that connects with people.
Yeah.
And, but of course I still like jazz and the occasional shoegaze, but listening to U2 became like this, like, I don't want to call it a reassurance or a crutch, but it was this thing that brought me to, an easygoing space, so much so, and I'm showing Kevin, I have a tattoo of all that.
Oh, lift it up a little bit.
All that you can't leave behind.
That's
album.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's subtle. It's not like a picture of Bono's face or something, but
there's still room. There's still room on that arm for it.
No thanks. I did play his birthday party once, by the way.
How did that go?
That was awesome.
Did you get to meet him and talk to him?
I did. Yeah.
What was that? You don't have to tell me. What was that like? He seems like he's Bono all the time.
I don't think he has a choice. I think he has to be Bono all the time.
Fair.
But I will say everyone in his camp was extremely gracious and kind. And the first thing he did before any guests arrived was walk up to the band, introduce himself, shake all of our hands, and it was a crazy night.
That's super cool. Oh man. I'll say this: very jealous. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Oh hey, it was. But anyway, yeah, that was not an anxious night, by the way.
Where was that night in the arc of things? Was that near the end? Was that near the beginning of it all?
Oh yeah, in a fine time, like yeah, I wasn't in the Mind Palace, as I like to call it.
The Mind Palace.
Yeah. Watch out for the Mind Palace.
So I'm curious. So to kind of take a step back, you said when you first started getting into therapy, you said you met with a guy. Things were working pretty well. You got some CBT forms. You built a hierarchy. What were some of the things that they had you doing? If you're comfortable kind of sharing, what were some of the things that they had you doing that were particularly helpful for you in your recovery to kind of get the ball rolling at the very least?
Well, ERP for sure. Some things we got into, like I mentioned, I was deeply analyzing my past and everything. So we do I'd go back and look at yearbooks and just relics from the past, and just try to look at those without trying to find something wrong with my child. Trying not to pass judgment, not to look at a picture and go, look at that weakling loser,
Yeah.
not that that's funny, but yeah, and yeah, it definitely helped. Some exposures just made me depressed.
Yeah.
Writing a script about the dissolution of my family or something like that, and it was then that I realized I was so consumed with OCD, related anxiety, and trying to work on it that I really wasn't, I wasn't doing anything for joy. Like nothing was bringing happiness. So like, I just did a yoga YouTube video, around the birth of my second child, and really found that a great way to work on mindfulness, and also like, body work and strength and flexibility, which is it's all tuned in to the mind. Your body feels good, your mind's gonna feel good, and vice versa. So I'd be lying if I said that didn't help me immensely in the last like 3 years. I've done it almost religiously for the last 3 years, like almost every day. 10 minutes to an hour a day, and just it's been really helpful for me in just letting thoughts pass by. The stream of thoughts, just let it keep flowing. Right. Because otherwise you're gonna fall on your ass during tree pose or something. And also like when I'm on the road, I do a lot of traveling. I try to find a class when I have an afternoon off or something, and that's like a big one. Just to get in front of people doing yoga, it's something I never thought I'd do. Especially like if I have to put my mat in front of the class, like right in front of the teacher, and just like all right, you just have to fully surrender to the situation. Right.
Yeah, and those are great, like just small little practices that you're incorporating just into your life. I was saying like part of the thing that's important to you is also going to be an exposure.
Yeah, exactly.
Just kind of creating that lifestyle of facing fears.
Yep. If it makes you a little uncomfortable, that means you're probably in the right place. Talking about anxiety and music and performing, like a little bit of anxiety is totally natural and good. It's gonna lead you to perform in a way that you wouldn't sitting in your room. Sitting in your room playing music, you pay attention to, you hone in on your technique, your sound, and everything. But when you're in front of lots of people and playing with a group in a live setting, the energy is completely different. You might play harder. You might, the person next to you is going to be playing something different, which is going to feed into what you're playing. So like, anxiety is part of that cocktail that you feel. At least that I feel when I'm playing. It leads to that special, unique performance.
Right.
But when it gets to the point when you go off the tracks, that's no bueno.
Right. Sure. There's actually something. Nerd research, there's something called the Yerkes-Dodson line, if you're familiar with that. I don't know if I talked to you about that or somebody else, but it's this kind of line of, it shows, as anxiety increases, your performance actually increases. But then once it gets to a certain point, it starts to crest and start coming down, where now the more anxiety you have, now it has a detrimental effect on your anxiety. How do you see yourself? How do you know that you're like crossed that line into too much stinking anxiety, and now it's a hindrance on your performance?
When I'm inside my head thinking about what's going on, when I'm like paying attention to the notes I'm playing,
right? The overanalysis
in an unhealthy way. So what I'm trying to do recently is, there's so much information going on. Just take myself out of the equation. Listen to what everybody else is doing, and more often than not, what you're playing is just going to fit into place without even thinking about it. And that's a huge tenet of playing improvised music and playing jazz. Just like, and I imagine improv comedy and any of that. You can't. It's not a one person show. You have to feed off what's going on around you.
Right, and being present. It's so funny. I zoned out for just a moment myself, and got in my head about got in my head about. I'm like, is there a flat 2 in that song? I need to go back and listen to it. I am going to go back and listen to the intro music, and kind of see if it is there. You're probably right. Brian previously had said, since he's obviously a musician, listened to the music and went, "Hey, there's this thing there." I went, "Is there?" And then my brain is perceiving it as a problem, and the reality is, it's probably not a significant enough problem. But that's my dumb brain is latching onto it. This is not your fault.
It's not. This is not a problem. Yeah, you missed our half hour diatribe on music theory before we started this. But for those keeping score at home, we were talking about the Phrygian mode. A keen-eared listener to the intro of Kevin's podcast. Well, the riff is actually it's a minor mode, which features a flat 2, which is cool. I thought it was a funky choice. It's not wrong by any stretch of the imagination. It's what Kevin was hearing, and I didn't know this, and you should know this, that Kevin composed that music, composed and recorded all the instruments. So that's pretty cool.
All the ridiculous instruments, but it's still. I mean, as you're describing it, it's interesting that my brain started going into that place of like there was a bit of a disconnection. So there's that. I to a certain degree, not to say that we've had the same experience, but I there is a dissociative process of that rumination and that excessive criticizing that we can do for ourselves, where now we are disconnected from what we're doing and we're not listening or responding to the other person as you would need to do in a performance capacity, as this is a performance capacity for myself as a podcast host.
Absolutely.
Right. And ultimately, as we just said, going down that rabbit hole is ultimately useless. What is more useful is to be present within this conversation.
Yeah. I mean, this is a big challenge for me to talk on a Google Meet, knowing it's going to be a podcast. The what ifs aren't as strong. I wouldn't have been able to do this 6 months, a year ago. Like, that's how I know I've been making some progress.
Right.
And if we're going to segue into like things that have helped me, continue to help me. But I'm still very much a work in progress. I can't speak to what helps anybody else, but I know what works for me. And just like anytime I think it was John Hirschfield speaking on your podcast last fall, and the depersonalization of the thoughts, being like just recognizing, oh, this is a thought that's happening, and I don't have to take it personally. I just know that this is a part of OCD, and I recognize the pattern, and I'm just going to let it pass on by, and I'm going to take that risk, so anyway, backing up, when I do enter a rumination and it starts to take hold, and a couple of physical things happen to me. My back has to crack. Like it tenses up so bad that I have to like lean against a chair or something and crack it, or my knuckles start to crack, or I start scratching my head. That's how I know it's entered like code red. That's status. Yeah. But so before I get to that point, I think, okay, 5 minutes from now, do I want to, I know what it feels like to be in a rumination. Do I want to continue this pattern? Do I want to feel like that in 5 minutes when I'm about to, go to a restaurant I really like? Do I want to lose that experience? Or do I want to just take the risk, abandon this thought, realize that it happened, it was there. I realized that, maybe last time I was at this restaurant, I felt a certain level of anxiety. That doesn't mean it has to happen again. It doesn't have to be a trigger. Just knowing what's on the other side of that rumination. It's been helpful to me, knowing that, And chances are that thought will never come up again, and I'll go to sleep. That wasn't the big problem that as you like to say, my dumb brain, my stupid brain, it wasn't the emergency that my brain thought it was.
Right. Yeah, it is a momentary freak out that in the grand scheme of things isn't important, but that feeling will suggest it is greatly important.
Yeah, and it could be the most ridiculous thing ever. And looking upon it, and from like an out of body experience, you can look down on yourself and be like, that makes zero sense. How could you, why are you wasting your time and energy trying to figure out this unsolvable equation?
Right. Yeah, I love that you also have those kind of canary in the coal mines with feeling like your back tense up and feeling it needing to crack, your knuckles need to crack. That you're kind of using that as a big red flag that you're either there or you're certainly on your way there to Rumination Town. That can be really helpful, just to say, all right, it's probably something that I'm going down this path. I'm going to wrench myself back, pull myself back.
Yeah, and that has serious physical ramifications too. Like I'm going to call my worst years probably 2016 to 2000. Let's take it through COVID, 2020, 20-ish. Yeah. It's like my back did not feel good. I was cracking it so much, and I had to get on the floor and just, I'm not a chiropractor. I'm not a skilled technician. So, and actually yoga helped greatly with that.
Uh-huh.
And also having a healthy mind. Also, an aside, I've been trying to play a little catch up with your podcast since we touched base. I know you mentioned this on your latest podcast, but I played a show in the LA area, and I knew Kevin was based there, and I just threw a shot in the dark and said, "Hey, man, if you want to come down, I'd love to meet you and thank you for your work." And sure enough, Kevin was there, and we got to meet and talk, and it was awesome.
It was super fun. I do really appreciate that. That was first time something like that has happened. It was awesome to be able to see you play, and that show was great. That venue was awesome as well.
Beautiful. Yeah. It was the LA County Arboretum, a beautiful place to visit should you find yourself in the Los Angeles outskirts.
Yeah, and I forget. I've been there once, just for the Arboretum, not for a show. It's alarming that you'll just see a full peacock just walk by.
That's true.
Just nonchalantly walk by, and you don't know how big they are or how aggressive sounding they are when they're howling at you. But
sure. So yeah, if you have a fear of peacocks, you know where to go to do some exposure work.
LA Arboretum is where it's at. That's right. Well, yeah, and you were. What was the group you were playing with? The Kings of Soul, right?
Yes.
So if you want to hear Brian play, check out the Kings of Soul if they're on tour going someplace.
I do.
They put on a good show.
Yeah, I work with a bunch of symphonic pops productions, and that's one of them. Yeah. Cool stuff. Very fun stuff.
Very cool. Well, is there? Oh, go ahead.
No, I was. So that the aside came about the meeting in LA, but I was talking about your podcast, and I feel we can edit this out. I felt like I was trying to make a point somewhere.
You were talking about your back and cracking it and catching up on a podcast.
Shit, that's a lot of information.
It's a lot of information. Well,
jumping around.
Anyway, overall, it sounded like you were kind of talking about things that have been really helpful for you. You're talking about how yoga was certainly helpful, and we were talking about the canary in the coal mine of having your noticing your back, your fingers needing to crack those, and then you talked about your worst years from I think 2016 up until up on into COVID.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that jostling anything?
I think I was gonna. Well, I don't know how it would tie in, but I think I knew where I was headed. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how to segue, but maybe you take the lead.
Well, I think I was going to say. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, you go ahead.
I think I was just going to segue into kind of wrapping things up and just kind of thinking about where you are today and what if there were some main takeaways that you could have for someone listening to the podcast. Let's say there was someone going through a similar situation that you have been through. What are some things that you might say to them at any point in their recovery?
Love it. Okay, I could do that. All right, and actually, one thing I was trying to catch up with your podcast a bit, going back to because I would use your podcast as a reassurance tool. Mm-hmm. Just to because along with your expertise, you do bring a certain amount of levity to the situation, which I really appreciate. You and your colleagues, and it's once again, thank you for your great work.
Absolutely.
But in the last couple of days, listening through the archives of the last couple of months, it was really interesting to listen to your podcast with a clear mind. And it's been like, so I can listen to it as like an educational tool rather than a reassurance tool, and it was really refreshing to do that.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting to be in a different headspace, and you can kind of hear things differently.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so I will continue to be an avid listener. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely. Any advice for someone going through treatment?
Yeah. One thing I didn't touch on, which I really wanted to hit on, was for those with partners and spouses, don't use them as a punching bag. Like, not a literal punching bag, but please don't use them as a literal punching bag. A figurative.
Both.
Both, exactly. It's exhausting. When 90% of my communication with my wife was for reassurances, or that was a bad thing, and exhausting for all parties involved. And go to therapy. Go see a therapist. There's nothing like a neutral third party to be your emotional punching bag. And it might take some work to find the correct therapist, and I have to go on the hunt again, and I will actively seek out, because I definitely feel like I do need some maintenance, and some just to keep on the right path. So be mindful of your spouse, and communication is key. I've been from a family who struggles currently, and has struggled with anxiety and mental health. I try to be vocal about it and not let it hide in the shadows. And like, especially during COVID, I really connected with some close friends of mine, and it turns out everyone was in therapy. Everyone has issues, and we could all talk openly about our problems, and that's it's a good feeling to be able to do that with the ones that you love, your friends and family, if you feel comfortable being open with them. And don't beat yourself up. Don't be too hard on yourself. Whether it's in the arts, performing, public speaking, podcasting, composing podcasts, intro music. It's like, while I'm saying this, I'm like, wow, practice what you preach. Mm-hmm. But especially in the musician world, you could get really tied up with social media. Oh yeah, put down your phones too. Phones are deadly dangerous. But like, every musician, when they're in the studio, they're just, my feet at any given time as musicians in the studio or writing retreats or doing whatever. I'd be like sitting home, be like, man, I'm not doing any of that. I just play bass. Mm-hmm. I don't have a slash. It's not Brian Killeen, producer, arranger. It's just Brian Killeen, bass player. But you know what? I've made it a living to this point. Just turned 42, and no turning back now. And I'm very happy with where I'm at and raising a beautiful family. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, and you do have a fantastic family. I got to meet them at the show as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can probably wrap it up there. I really appreciate all the thoughts you had on your progress, the arc of where you have been, where you are now, and kind of those words of encouragement for someone else out there who might be going through it just like you had.
Yeah, I hope something I say could be valuable. I'm anything besides OCD podcasts. My main listening is to comedy podcasts. So I never thought my podcast debut would be on an anxiety podcast, but here we are, and this is cool. Life is wacky and wonderful.
That's right. And you know what? This is your first podcast, but it may not be your last.
Hey, that's right. We're gonna dig into our bass and anxiety podcast.
Yeah. Oh.
Hey, listen. I mean, bass players and anxiety. We could. I could. That's a thing.
I've known a good amount of bass players that. Good amount of bass players have some anxiety. Yeah, I think guitar players have a lot of arrogance, but that's just me maybe shooting arrows that I don't need to, and I'll just shut it down from there. So why don't we call it quits here? But again, Brian,
Sounds
I really appreciate that. And where can people learn more about you and find information about you?
I have a very outdated website on an outdated server, which won't give you any up-to-date information. That's at briankilleenmusic.com. But mostly I'm just on Instagram, Brian Killeen Music. That's, my name, BrianKilleen Music. And there'll be a lot of pictures of coffee, beer, and the occasional, whatever shows I'm doing.
Awesome, Brian. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for your time, and have a great day.
Thanks, Kevin. It was a pleasure. Hope to talk soon.
All right. Thank you so much for making it through that episode. So if you have further questions for Brian or would like to even add your voice on a future episode, go over to fearcastpodcast.com and send me a message over there. And I'd be happy to get Brian back on to talk a little more about his experience, and also to try to see if we can hear a little bit about what your experience has been with anxiety and OCD as it pertains to your artistic endeavors. So please remember, everybody, that the Fearcast is not a substitute for psychotherapy. If you need a little bit of help in your recovery, go over to fearcastpodcast.com, click on the Find Help link, and there's going to be some information for you there. So until then, everybody, until next time, take a risk, challenge yourself, and don't take your brain too seriously. Bye.